So a really warm welcome to Rachael Talibart, who is best known for her seascapes and coastal imagery. So I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. It's really lovely to meet you anyway, Rachael, finally.
It's absolutely lovely to be here. We've come close to meeting. We've been on the same beach, but not actually close enough to say hello.
It was really quite funny, that, wasn't it? Because I must have been literally like a 3-minute walk away from you, but I didn't know you were there.
No, I was right up the other end. So I think I couldn't possibly have seen you because we were too far away.
I think it was a video that Mark Littlejohn put out, wasn't it? Then I realised, I was like, oh yeah, I was in that awful storm as well. But I think I was probably I was gathering, I had a few people with me, so I was gathering them or ushering them back to the car quickly. You were standing there in it.
Well, there was no way I was going to get out of it. I was too far from anywhere, so I just had to stand my ground and hope for the best.
And it was funny, isn't it? Because that week there was so many photographers there, and it was quite funny. A few people have mentioned that to me, and they said, "How annoying is that there was so many photographers in Harris at the same time?" I was like, "Well, actually, it's quite nice, isn't it?" I got to meet Adrian Beasley, and we had a chat, and obviously didn't meet you, but everybody else. It's really nice to have. I think that's a nice thing. Do you agree with me?
I think so. I think it's probably frustrating when the beaches are crowded, but of course there's so much space there, and I always tend to walk as far as I can get from the car park anyway. So I definitely had a big chunk of Scarsta Beach to myself several days in a row, so it was good.
Yeah, it was February, so
yeah.
You're going to, aren't you, I suppose?
Yes.
So do you often go to Harris in the winter?
Every February.
Oh, do you?
Yes.
Yeah. It's a great time to go, though, isn't it? The winter's just beautiful.
It is, but the word's out now, isn't it? So we maybe should stop telling people how lovely it is in that month.
I know. I do wonder about that. I know I'm running workshops all February, March this year, but I'm going over next week or the week after, but I shoot weddings over there. So very different experience in August, I have to say.
Oh, I should imagine. Yes. Goodness me. Do you get midges?
Rarely, because of the wind. So, but if it's still there, yes, there are certainly midges in Harris, but it's more the amount of people that's the problem.
Yeah.
And
so how do you deal with that then?
I don't really shoot what I would call my own photography work, so I do other things. So obviously I'm usually shooting weddings and whatnot, but I will go for doing things like being in the water with my cameras, which is what I'm doing just now, where you get this, it's great if it's sunnier and calmer. So just switching what I do, but before I was doing that, I wouldn't even bother photographing. I don't know. How do you feel about that? Do you are you waiting for those wilder conditions in the winter as well?
Yeah, I do like them. They're very nice. But I like people, but when I'm doing photography, I prefer to be alone. So I'm even thinking about going somewhere else in February next year because it was very crowded. So we'll see. I've never seen it that busy before in that week that we always go.
Yeah, no, it was fairly busy, wasn't it? Well, I mean, you say busy, and sometimes I say to people, it's really busy on this beach. There's like 10 people, but it's all it's what you're used to, isn't it? But the other islands, there's plenty other islands, as well. So you could explore new places, maybe.
Yes, absolutely. I think the time might be right for that.
It might be, actually, yes. Yeah, I totally understand that. And I think that idea of shooting alone is quite important to you, is it?
It is. I'm very friendly with someone who you've interviewed already, Jennifer Bunnett.
Yeah.
Yes. So Jen and I, in fact, we're going out tomorrow with our cameras. First time in ages because of various things that life throws at you. And so we enjoy sharing a carpooling, and we enjoy having someone to have coffee with and cake. But when it comes to actually doing the photography, we get down on the beach wherever we've gone and we just go, we split. one goes north and one goes south, or in my case, right here on the south coast, it's east or west. And we usually stand as far away from each other as we possibly can.
Well, yeah, I remember her saying that actually. She's so lovely, isn't she? And her work is just gorgeous. But it's so nice to have that companionship, isn't it? So we're talking about companionship in a solitary, something that's very solitary.
Yes.
But that's the point, and you demonstrate that really well. Actually, you've got that lovely relationship that we need people around us as well, and we need that sort of community, don't we?
Absolutely right. Yeah, it's nice to have a balance of both in life. I think your alone time and your people time.
Yeah, and I suppose the people time is really valuable when they're like-minded people. So, obviously you and Jennifer are like-minded, and probably I am as well, actually, because I would feel the same about shooting together with somebody. So when you're around people that love the same sort of thing, then it's good. But it wouldn't be the same if you were just spending time with people who weren't on the same page as you, or didn't have the same interests.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've learned is that, and Jen's the same, I tend to put everything after the photography. So, I'll keep going long after it's really cold. I'm really hungry. I need other things that I won't go into on this podcast, and just lose myself in it. And Jen's exactly the same. And I think it would be really hard if one of us was sort of texting the other saying, I'm at the car, as if, it's time to go. But we actually almost always, if we're on the same beach, providing we can see each other, we seem to look up at the same moment. We seem to know when the light is no longer worth it. I guess most photographers would look up at the same moment because we're so in tune with the light.
Yeah, that's really nice to found that, though, isn't it? I don't think I found that, actually. I shoot alone mostly, or probably because I travel alone in my van, and nobody would really want to join me in the van experience, I don't think. So I don't really have that. I probably miss that a little bit, actually. But then there's so much other community going on in my life that it's
fine.
It's fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
So where else do you find that community?
Well, I find it with my workshop clients. Yes, so many of them are now, I hope I'm on good terms with all of them, but the ones who come regularly to my workshops, you end up getting to know them, don't you? And becoming very interested in their own creative development and successes and everything. So that's really nice. Jen and I also formed a little collective many years ago called Parhelion. And there are 8 of us, well, sort of 9, but unfortunately the 9th person has some serious health issues that have stopped him from participating. And that's nice. We have a WhatsApp thread, and every now and then we have a Zoom meeting, and we're actually getting together in August, I think, for lunch, most of us. So that's lovely, actually.
That's a lovely idea, actually. I was aware of it. I wasn't quite sure what sort of form it took, but I think it's a really nice idea. We all need that support, don't we? And
absolutely, yeah. And we've done a joint exhibition, and we're planning other things. And the key thing for me and Jen when we sort of started it was that it's not anybody's group. We may have started it, but we're all equals. There are no leaders. And I know some people have said to me, well, you'll never get anything done then. You need a leader. But actually, it seems to work.
It's really good. It's really nice to hear, actually. And I think that's what I get from you. And I've listened to a couple of other podcasts and that you've been interviewed on. And what I'm getting is that there's a sort of a friendliness, and I suppose that landscape photography can be like have a bit of an edge of competitiveness or whatever, but I don't feel that from you at all, and that's really nice because we need that. We really need that more.
I don't like competing with other professionals, and I would always celebrate their successes. I think it's a shame that in some circles people see another photographer's success as somehow a reduction of their own, whereas that's not the case, actually. So yes, it's really nice not to get into that mindset. I think that would be sad if you lived in that way, because you'd be constantly feeling set back, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and it's really good to hear you speak about that, actually, because I think that it's usually a problem with the person themselves, isn't it? Who's feeling that they're feeling like everybody else is doing better, or doing better work, or there's you're looking at somebody else thinking, oh, they're always doing this, and they've got so much time, or they've got this and that, and to break that down and to have a look at why that's happening, it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Because you don't know, do you? I look at you and I see that you're obviously really busy. You're running workshops and you're on social media. One thing I noticed that you always reply to all your comments, and I'm thinking, how do you do that?
Well, it's got a lot easier since February, because the algorithm now hates me. So no one sees my work, and there are far fewer comments.
I think it's great, and I think it's very admirable. I don't know. So when we this whole social media thing, isn't it? It's like, how do you find the time? Well, she's obviously more efficient than me. I don't know. Maybe it's just algorithm.
Oh yeah. I mean, I yes, as I say, it has got a lot easier now since the algorithm no longer lets people see my work. So at least that saved me some time.
Yes,
there's always a silver lining, right?
There we go. It does lead me to one of the bigger questions, what you were saying earlier. One of the questions that I've got here is, I'm always trying to find out what people's why is behind their work. So you've probably had this question before, you thought about it. So what I was really interested in is, because I can see you're busy. You're working. You must be working really hard. You've got the workshops going on. You've always seems to be exhibiting and creating books and being on social media. So that's a busy life, isn't it? So, but why are you doing it? And obviously, there's two elements to that, isn't there? So I suppose we start with the teaching side. Can you answer that question? I know it's quite a tricky one.
No, I can. So yes, starting with the teaching side, the why is quite easy, and that I've always, in fact, when I was a child, that was the only thing I wanted to be, was a teacher. And my mother was a teacher, I guess, and I really loved her, so I admired her and wanted to be like her. But then when I was sort of doing A-levels, people said to me a terrible thing. They said, well, you're too clever to be a teacher. You're going to get A's. You should go to university and do something more highbrow. And I think that's awful advice, because actually we want clever teachers, and teaching is one of the most admirable professions I can imagine. And there are a lot of very clever teachers, of course. But you know what? When you're that age, you're very susceptible to persuasion. So I was a real little feminist in those days. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I still am. But I was a feminist in a way only a teenager can be, which is very passionate. So I picked another profession, which was the one that my dad was doing, which was law. And one of the reasons I picked that was because when I went for my careers interview at school, they never suggested that to me. So I thought, right. So bloody minded, I think. And I did that for years. But towards the end of those years, I moved sideways into training other lawyers. And my job fulfillment went up enormously. So I realized that actually I much preferred teaching than I did practicing law. So roll on the clock about 15 more years when I'd left the legal profession, I'd gone back to university, and then I decided to become a full-time professional photographer. Leading workshops was a no-brainer, because it meant that I could get back to teaching. And I do get really, really invested in my clients' success. And some clients who've been with me from where I first started running workshops at the end of 2014. So they've been with me for 7 years. And I've seen them go from being so nervous at the start of a workshop, having to sort of be seen making photos that their hands were shaking, to producing really powerful pictures that express something very deeply felt in themselves. And that sense of fulfillment that they have from being creative is so empowering. And I feel really chuffed that I've been a very small part in that journey for them. So it's utterly fulfilling for me as well.
Oh, that's great. I am glad I asked you that question, because that's such a lovely answer. And I suppose that ties in with that lack of competitiveness. I don't know, there must be another word for it than that. But when we are teaching from a place of genuinely wanting somebody else to do well or feel better, whatever it is, that's coming from the right place, isn't it? And that means that you'll work at that, and you work hard, because workshops they're hard work, aren't they? They're very when you put a lot into them, which you clearly do.
I do. I don't make photos when I'm leading workshops, and for the day workshops in particular, I've got 4 clients, and they've only got me for a day, and I don't think I could possibly do right by them if I were also trying to make my own photos. And at the end of the day, I get home, because I've got an hour and a half drive each way at the beginning and the end. I get home and I'm absolutely exhausted, but in a really nice way. So it's all good.
Yeah, it is exhausting, isn't it? But as you say, it's uplifting as well when you know that people have taken something away. And when they, there's one lady that she's actually in my membership group, and she came to Harris with me, and she greeted me. I walked into the room, she said, "You changed my life." And I was like, really? That's everything.
So nice. That's everything. Absolutely. If you're doing that for clients, then you're doing a brilliant job. Well done.
Yeah, and it's all you need, isn't it, to keep you going, and to keep teaching and going, oh, this is right. This is what my purpose is. This is what I want to be doing. Whether that format changes, I suppose, a little bit as we go. I'm not sure. I don't know. You do longer workshops as well, so you do overseas, don't you?
I do. I'm not doing long haul anymore because of climate change. So I'm becoming the Iceland and Portugal person for ocean capture. They're 2 places that I love very much and know very well. But I bunch all the Iceland workshops together. So I only have 1 flight for me. Obviously, the clients are flying too. So it's something I'm worried about, but it is my living. And I do enjoy them. So they're a week long, sometimes 6 days or 7 days. I'm doing 3 back to back in September. But they're really nice too, because, and I know you do them as well, longer ones, because then even within the space of the workshop, you can see progress. And that's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's when you see a transformation, it's just absolutely incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tend to, all my workshops are in Scotland, so I'm sort of staying very close to home. So I'm intrigued by the idea, and I'm still thinking this one through. Maybe you can help me with it. It's something that I'm always thinking about. Is should I? No. Will I go further to different coastlines? How far will I go? Scotland's my passion. I love Scotland. At the moment, my view is that I don't really want to leave Scotland, because there's so much coast here. There's so many islands. There's so much opportunity. And for me, I feel connected to it. So it's these connections. But I don't know. I don't know whether if I went to Iceland or to Portugal, beautiful waves in both places, would I find those connections if I kept going long enough?
You might. But I think have you done workshops in Cornwall?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's actually something very similar to the light, isn't there, in Cornwall as there is in Scotland?
Exactly. Exactly. That's why. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's your choice, really. But yes, if you kept going to somewhere new, of course, you would find your own special way in. But maybe there's something also rather lovely about you being the Scotland specialist.
Yeah, I don't really want to. It's like I feel like that generally in my life. I don't really want to go abroad. I used to do travel photography. Don't really feel the need for photography to go abroad. But things you never say never, do you? And I just find it quite interesting. Those ideas of shooting close to home or traveling for your work. So yeah,
well, I think yes. I mean, for me, I think it has to be. I need to run a workshop somewhere I know really well that I have been doing my own photography at many times. So Portugal is somewhere that my husband and I love and have spent a lot of time. And Iceland, I've been to more times than I can count and done a lot of my own photography there. So for me, I think I have to, because you said your question about the why had two halves, right?
Oh,
so
yes.
First of all, the workshops. So we're coming on to the second half now.
We are.
Which is the portfolio work. Yeah. I think that has to come first. And I think you probably agree. You have to have created work that fulfills you before you can teach others to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. I think you've got to have found your own why and understand yourself and understand your work and be content and at peace with it and all of those things and have mastered it basically and feel quite happy with it. And then you can teach others, I think.
Yes, I agree with you. And I can't imagine any other way to do it, really. No. How would you teach them if you hadn't done that? I don't know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. No, I think you do. I think you do. I think it's a given, isn't it? So the why behind your personal work then, are you just driven to keep shooting? Is it just for me? It is, there's nothing massively complex about it. Actually, it's just, I just love shooting. I love creating that work and I love being in those places.
Me too. I'm missing it because I haven't used my camera since April, which is an incredibly long time for me. It's just been a variety of reasons. So tomorrow is going to be wonderful. I don't really care what the weather does. I know the tides aren't good, but I need to get out with the camera. It's important. So normally I would do a lot more photography than I've been doing for the last 3 months.
So why have you not been doing so much in the last 3 months?
Family commitments mainly. Yes, I've got 2 grown-up children. My daughter is at university in America. So she came home for 2 months for May and June. And I just wanted to be with her. I didn't want to disappear off and do other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand that. My son is also at university and has come home for the summer, and my youngest is still at home preparing to leave, hopefully in August. I'm not going to say too much because they edit this podcast. But life's been busy, and it's just kind of like, I just really want some time with my camera. And actually, I find it quite frustrating. As nice as family life is, it's quite hard, isn't it, to juggle everything?
It is, yes, definitely.
And do you find that then, obviously naturally the work takes a back seat, doesn't it?
It sometimes does, yes. My daughter's gone back to America now. My son is older and has his own home in London. So it's in some ways I've moved to the next stage, which is the empty nest, which I hate. I'd much rather they were still here, but they're not. And in theory, that gives me more time to do my own photography. But we've just had, obviously, 18 months of craziness, 2 years of craziness with COVID, and all of the workshops that I had that were no longer able to take place were postponed into what was already a full timetable because my workshops are booking up to 2024. So it's been double workshops for since lockdown ended, which is quite a long time ago now.
Yeah, so busy.
So that's been another reason. But now I'm more or less caught up. So that's good. Hope for a bit more time for my own work now.
Yeah, I got out last week I had a wedding, so I had an excuse to go. So I went to Harris for a wedding, and then I got out on a trip to St Kilda, which
I'm jealous. I've never been.
If you know, it's I've been. I'm not going to say it. I've been a few times, but that's because I'm on Harris quite a lot. So so St Kilda, I went first as on an assignment as a travel photographer. I went on this luxury cruise ship, and we sailed in. It was just ridiculous, but lovely, very lovely. And then the next few times, I've just been on the old rough boat from Harris, which is just awful. It's such a long journey, but it was really nice to go. I just had that one day for myself, and I was actually swimming there with my cameras. So great. I came back feeling totally like myself again, which I'd really, really missed this summer of just doing housework and looking after the children. So talking of children, did you how did you find the path into photography? You know, obviously as a parent, life is really busy, isn't it? So I can only say, again, I'm looking at you thinking, you must have worked really hard to get where you are.
I do work really hard. Actually, Adrian, who you mentioned earlier, Adrian Beasley, said a thing to me the other day. He said, of all the professional photographers I work with, you work the hardest, which I thought was probably a nice thing. He meant it nicely. I have a very well-developed work ethic. And I've always worked hard. In fact, my husband said, you never do anything by halves. If you're going to do it, you do it to the utmost. And it's just who I am. So, but I was the same with the kids. So being a mum I was very devoted to that. And photography did take a back seat for a long time. But then when they got to the age where they didn't need me as much, I started to pick it up again. And actually for about 3 or 4 years, a little known fact, I was completely obsessed with insects. So I just did insect photography because I had a garden and I planted it for insects. And my kids could be in the house doing their homework or piano practice or whatever, and I could nip outside and make photos. So for about 3 or 4 years, I then became ever more obsessed with smaller and smaller insects until I was photographing these tiny things called springtails, which most people don't even know exist because they live almost on the microscopic level, and just enjoyed it. So that was nice. It just kept me going and developing while the children were around. And then as they started to be sort of later teens and constantly, in my daughter's case, constantly out, I started going to the coast, which is where I really wanted to be.
Yeah, I suppose a little bit like during lockdowns where we didn't have you don't always have the options, do you? So you're not locked down when you're a parent, but you are in a little way, aren't you? You're limited. You can't do what you really want to do. So finding contentment in something that sort of replaces that a little bit or hones your skills a little bit. It's a really admirable thing to have done, to found something like that, to, in the meantime. I found it frustrating when they were little, actually, not being able to go places. I used to take them with me. We started traveling over to the islands, and when they were, I think I've got pictures of them. They must have been like 2 and 5 or something. So we started going over back then, and I would take my mum and get her to stay in in the evenings with them. I'd persuade her, sleep. Can I go? And I'd be like chomping at the bit, going out down to the beach. But yeah, your time is very constrained by that, isn't it? Just naturally. It's just natural, isn't it? Because you have to care for them. So, but it's an interesting thing that not many people think about. Actually, I suppose other people have constraints with other things like full-time jobs.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I know there's not that I particularly want to talk about women in photography because I don't think our gender should be terribly relevant, but I usually object when the suggestion is made that it's harder for women to do landscape photography, because I don't think it is. And so many of my clients, men and women alike, are juggling busy lives with their photography, either family or full-time jobs, usually both. And I'm just in awe of the way they manage that and actually still find time for for their photography. It's admirable.
Yeah, it's something that I've thought a lot about. Obviously, it's something that I've thought about having the discussion about. It's obviously a very tricky subject. Gender is something that we can't seem to be able to talk about very openly anymore without being criticised. So, which I don't know why, because actually, it really is just observation. When I look at it, it's just I'm just observing. I'm not going to go into it now, but I agree with you. I see men who have full-time, really hectic jobs and children.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it. James Kelly is a friend of mine who's running a couple of workshops with me now. And he's got 2 young kids. He runs workshops, and he's also doing some sort of online. No, he's doing a degree actually. So some people just have a lot on, don't they?
They do. Well, there is that saying, isn't there? If you want to get something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah. You do more when you're busy, don't you?
Yes.
I've sort of slowed down this summer. I've been like, why am I not getting through so much?
But you have to have times like that too, don't you? Otherwise you'll burn out, and there's no one benefits from a person burning out.
They don't, do they? No, definitely not yourself.
No.
So how do you manage that then? How are you just hyper aware of that, or is it something that you?
No, I'm probably very prone to the danger of burning out, because I do go hell for leather. I really go for it. And I think, there were a couple of times towards the end of that period of catching up with the workshops where I thought, if this had to go on any longer, this would be unsustainable. But it didn't. I got through it. Most of the time it was fine. But every now and then you just, I'm not in my 20s or even my 30s or even my 40s anymore. And, you have to be kind to yourself sometimes and realize that actually you need a rest.
So do you just take a period of time off, or do you just manage it during the day? It's just something. I was listening to a podcast yesterday actually, and it was a lady talking about energy and how she manages energy levels. I struggle with energy levels. Hugely. I might not look like I do, but the amount of things that I do, a lot of people say, you're always doing this and you've got this going on. And I do have a lot going on, but I'm also very tired a lot of the time. So it's just management. It really, I have chronic fatigue. So, I'm prone to a lot of these sort of chronic conditions. So it's management of that for me on a daily basis. So even though I might be at work I work 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and then it goes downhill from there. And I'll have like a 3-hour lunch break where I'll probably have a sleep, and then I'll start again. So I just manage it on a daily basis. And then when I go into a really bad place, I'll just get in my van and go away for a few days by myself, and I feel better. Is that how does that look? What's that look like for you?
Well, I'm constantly being told that I have too much energy. I think my poor clients, they're quite used to the fact that apparently I have a very long stride and I walk very fast. And yes, it's just it. And I even talk too fast. So I do have a lot of energy,
right.
Which is nice. I'll probably just one day just keel over. I'll have used it all up finally. But no, I'm lucky, and I'm really sorry that you have chronic fatigue. I have a friend who's had that all her life, and I know how hard that is. So amazing that you do what you do, actually.
To me, it's just something that I've always had. So it's like, and also when I run workshops, I can find, as long as I'm outside and I don't go indoors, I can just keep going. So it's very different during those workshop periods. That's probably the only time I just keep working through it. But when I'm by myself, I'll just do it on a daily sort of basis. But it's really nice to hear that you have all that energy. I'd like some of it, and maybe I'll get some tips from you.
Well, but I think you have the answer to an extent, because you're right. Spending that time out in nature and by the sea energizes you. There's a book, I've forgotten the name of the author, so now I'm ashamed of myself, but It's called The Salt Path.
Oh, yeah.
You read that? Yeah.
Yes.
And her husband, whose name I do remember because he's called Moth, her husband has a really dreadful disease. And it means that he's very weak and he has no energy. And then they go and do this crazy walk and he improves so much. He becomes strong and healthy. And then when they have to have some time over the winter away from the walking, he goes downhill again. And then they resume the walking and he comes back up. And of course, it's not a fictional book, it's true. So I think this is part of the problem we face in the world, isn't it? We've become so disconnected with nature that we no longer realize that we need it. We need it to feel strong and energized.
Yeah, absolutely. I was hoping to interview her actually, because that book was just fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And you're absolutely right. You're right. You know, what happened to him, it's just like, it's just testament, isn't it? Actually just being outdoors. And yeah, for me, I just know, I know that being behind a computer isn't good for me. No, that I need to be outdoors more. I know that I've got more energy when I'm out walking and swimming and whatnot. So we do know the answer in some ways, you know, I think.
Yes, I think that's true.
But it's good to hear you've got that energy. So just be careful of it, you know. Because you're probably likely to go to allow yourself to overwork then, aren't you?
Yes, I do. Yes.
That explains all those replies to those comments on Instagram that you managed to do.
Yes. It's probably silly. I set myself that rule at the start when I had very few followers, and then it got harder and harder and harder. And I just kept going. It's
actually really nice. I think it's really respectful when people have taken the time to say something, as long as it's genuine and it's not like, I don't know, follow my NFT account here.
If they mentioned NFTs, they'd get blocked immediately. Block the heck out of them. Have strong views on that. But I mean, those ones that you get now, where you, as soon as you've posted a new picture, you get this send pic to, you know, they are deleted. There's no replying to them. They are gone.
No, as long as you're sensible, isn't it? And you're sensible enough to know this is a real person who's taken the time to make a comment. Yes. I find it hard sometimes I don't keep up as well as I think I should, but I don't, because I just don't. But I do think it's nice what you're doing. I think it's really nice, and also that you're applying to people, and you're a human being and you're a real person, even though you've got a big following. I think that's really nice.
I just think it's so nice of people to say something nice. I'm always going to say thank you, just like you would in a face-to-face conversation. If someone said, "Oh, I love your work," you wouldn't just turn away. You'd say thank you very much.
I know, you wouldn't just ignore them, would you?
No,
it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's there's a lot going on for you, though, isn't there? There's a lot of you've got a following on Instagram, and then you've obviously all the workshops going. So to keep up with it all, it's admirable. Do you have help in your business at all?
Well, Adrian Beasley and I work together. So in fact, he and Clea Beasley will be here for a week in August. They stay with us here in my house, and we run classroom workshops. So I do quite a lot with Adrian online as well, online mentoring of small groups and things like that. So I really like Adrian. I think he's gold. And Clea's lovely too. So it's nice sometimes to work with other people. You can be alone too much, I think, sometimes with your own thoughts.
Yeah. I met Clea actually in Harris. Really nice. Yeah, and it's lovely that you're working with others as well. I'd like to do more of that actually. I just tend to. I don't know why. I've just gone into this. You did
work with Paul, I think, didn't you?
Yes,
he's a lovely guy, and Mark Dobson. Did you work with Mark as well?
In Cornwall?
Yes.
I actually now Paul went to work with Ocean Capture.
I know, that's where I am.
Yeah, things change, don't they, for people? And we just evolve, don't we? We move on. I actually have now a lady who was actually on one of the first workshops with me, Leslie Lintott, and she is now assisting me on my workshops. So that's really nice. It's really nice to have somebody to really lead, talk things through, and where we're going now and what we're doing now. I think that's really important.
For my Iceland workshops, I have a driver and guide for most of them, not all of them, but almost all of them. And her name's Sola, and she is awesome.
Oh.
And we're really good friends. I just like her so much, and that's really nice.
That's really good. It's taking the pressure off, isn't it? I'd like to see the Iceland coast, actually. That's probably, there is a few places that I'd quite like to see. So, but yeah, I've got a new puppy as well. So I'm not traveling anywhere at the moment.
Oh, what sort of puppy?
Oh, she's a whippet, but we've had whippets, we've had many whippets before, and we've waited a long time for her. So this summer, because I'm here, but most whippets are slightly calmer in nature, but I think she broke the mold, so she's something else.
Oh, how old is she?
She's 4 months now, so
okay.
So I'm taking her away to Harris next 2 weeks' time in the van, so we'll see how that goes. Could be really amusing, that one. I'll make a little video about it, because
you must.
I don't know. Oh yeah, she's just we've got her so she can travel with me, so that's why we got a puppy, otherwise we would have just rescued. Yeah, so so maybe that's my companion.
I think that sounds lovely.
Oh, that's great. Oh, it's been really, really lovely to chat with you. I've got loads of other questions, but I think we've covered some really nice topics there, and yeah, it's been really lovely to meet you as well. I'm sure we'll meet at some point face to face.
I expect so. Yes. No, it's been really nice. Lovely to meet you virtually.
Thank you so much.